Welcome to today's Nicaragua webinar entitled Nicaragua, Working to Make Earth Green Again. My name is Barbara Larkham and I'll serve as co-moderator today along with Nan McCurdy. We're honored to hear from today's speaker, Ambassador Valdrack Jaentschke. We'll introduce the ambassador at greater length in a few minutes. We want to thank Yoav Elenevsky, who's providing our technical support, and our many organizational co-sponsors who are being listed now in the chat. Before we begin, we have a few requests and announcements. You'll see several buttons available at the bottom of your screen. One button is for closed captions, CC. Just click to turn it on. Also feel free to use the chat function to offer comments throughout this event. But if you have a question for the speakers, please don't put your question in the chat or we may not see it. Instead, click the Q&A button and place your question there. Nan and I will be selecting your questions from the Q&A to pose to our speaker. This webinar is being recorded and the recording will be sent to all registrants within the next few days. When it's ready, it will also be posted at nicasolidarity.net and on the YouTube channel of Nicaragua Solidarity Coalition. If you'd like to become more active in supporting Nicaragua's sovereignty and opposing foreign interference there, please join the International Nicaragua Solidarity Coalition. You can check the website regularly at nicasolidarity.net. Also, please put your name and email address in the Q&A if you'd like to receive action alerts, the weekly newsletter, and monthly meeting notices. The next meeting of the Nicaragua Solidarity Coalition is on Monday, February 12th. To save as much time as possible for this program, we'll enter some other information in the chat about other ways you can get involved or learn more about Nicaragua. The format for today's 75-minute webinar is the following. First, we'll hear from Nan McCurdy with current news briefs from Nicaragua. Then, after our featured speaker, the remaining time will be for questions and answers. And now to introduce Nan McCurdy, who will provide us with Nicaragua news briefs. Nan is the editor of the online weekly Nica Notes, published by Alliance for Global Justice. She lived in Nicaragua for over 30 years, and she continues to have deep connections there. Nan McCurdy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Welcome to everyone. Nicaragua was the first country to state that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, and it is among the first countries to express support for South Africa's lawsuit charging Israel with violation of the Genocide Convention. Along with Bolivia, Cuba, Venezuela, and a growing number of states worldwide, Nicaragua has welcomed the suit that South Africa filed with the International Court of Justice. It expressed a desire to join that case at the earliest opportunity and gives its full support for the Global Citizens Initiative to encourage more countries to join the suit before the World Court. The January 9th press release reads, Nicaragua considers that the legal action against Israel at the ICJ is a concrete step in compliance with the legal obligations that each state party to the Genocide Convention has the duty to take. As a state party to the Genocide Convention, Nicaragua urges Israel to fulfill its obligations under international law and to immediately cease its military assault against the Palestinian people. Nicaragua also calls for an end to the occupation and for the establishment of conditions for a lasting and permanent solution. The Pan American Health Organization, as part of the United Nations Interagency Working Group on Non-Communicable Diseases, recognized Nicaragua for its outstanding contribution towards the achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals through its health services as part of the family and community health model. Nicaragua was selected from among 24 countries that applied, thanks to its leadership in working with the population and its general and specialized knowledge. The award also noted the innovative approach of Nicaragua's strategy, which serves as an example to other countries. On January 5th, the former president of the Central America Bank for Economic Integration, Dante Mossi, said that Nicaragua for many years has had the best structure to implement projects. Mossi stated that Nicaragua is a partner of Chavez and an owner of 10.6% of total shares. This entitles Nicaragua to an estimated 600 to 800 million per year in development loans. Mossi explained that the active portfolio is dispersed in a well-planned and financially ordered manner with a very strong fiduciary filter. The object of the financing is to improve the lives of the general population. A National Forestry Institute report on advances of the 2023 forestry campaign states that between January and November, 26 million trees were planted. 15,000 forestry economic packages were delivered in 14 departments and both of the Caribbean Coast autonomous regions. 4,000 community nurseries were also established. Nicaragua has opened 178 houses of culture and creativity throughout the country, spaces where courses in dance, drawing, painting, guitar, violin, choir, singing, marimba, mural painting, wicker and fiber handicrafts, among many others, are taught. Recently, the municipalities of Huaspan and Yalahuina inaugurated houses of culture with the participation of local families. The health system has successfully performed 197 fetal surgeries since March 2021. Fetal surgery in Mexico costs about $25,000, while in Nicaragua, it is completely free. On November 27, Latino Metrics, specializing in growth data for the region, highlighted the progress made by Nicaragua in renewable energy, saying, surpassing Norway and Sweden, Nicaragua shines in renewable energies. They will literally lead most of the world in clean energy, reports Latino Metrics portal. In a span of 2 decades, Nicaragua more than tripled the previous clean energy figure from 21% to 70%. And according to the World Bank, Nicaragua is a renewable energy paradise due to its rich geothermal resources, abundant wind and sun, and diverse water sources. On December 9th, the government of Nicaragua denounced the repeated non-compliance by developed capitalist countries, which continue to increase pollution and aggravate the climate crisis. During the conference of the parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP28, the Nicaraguan representative, Valdrack Jaentschke, Minister Advisor for International Affairs, demanded that the developed nations fulfill their financial commitments, including reparations, based on their historical responsibility. The reparations would go to developing countries so they can face the socioeconomic and environmental impacts of climate change. The statement noted that Nicaragua has no historical responsibility for causing climate change. The 10 countries with the highest emissions in the world emit more than 83%, while Nicaragua emits less than 0.05%. Unfortunately, Nicaragua suffers consequences that reach 8% of its GDP. The statement went on to say that it is essential that capitalist countries reduce emissions by at least 50% at the latest by 2030. In a few moments, you will hear much more on this topic. Thank you so much. Back to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Nan. It's always good to hear all the progress that Nicaragua is making in so many different areas. And now we turn to our featured speaker. Ambassador Valdrack Jaentschke was appointed in 2019 as Minister Advisor for International Relations to the President of the Republic of Nicaragua, with a focus on relations with the Caribbean community. He is the accredited non-resident ambassador to the CARICOM countries. Between 2015 and April 2019, he served as Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs. During that period, he was also appointed in 2017 as Secretary of the Presidency for the Development of the Caribbean coast of Nicaragua. From 2007 to 2015, he was the Secretary of External Cooperation in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Over this entire period, he's worked with government, national and international organizations, and academia on issues of human development, management, strategic planning, negotiation, and decision-making in public policies, keeping closely involved in the promotion of the autonomous rights of the indigenous and Afro-descendant population in Nicaragua. He grew up in Corn Island on the Caribbean coast of Nicaragua. Welcome, Ambassador Jaentschke. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm humbled by many things. Number one, by your invitation to speak this evening, and this very important topic. But as Nan was going through all of those things that we're doing, I'm humbled and proud, because really we are, in Nicaragua, we are in the middle of a revolutionary process. And you sometimes measure that revolutionary process by actions, by things, by achievements, but also the transformation of the society. And I think it's important to recognize how much we have advanced. How much we have advanced. We also must remember that we have our first period of the revolution from 79 to 1990, in which we set many of the bases, ideological, political, organizational, and governmental basis for what we're doing today. So as I heard Nan go through all of those tangible achievements, I also must recognize that the society is changing, and that's important. You know, and that resilience, that capacity to understand changes, that capacity to confront the aggression that we suffer from imperialist forces. I mean, so we have been at this struggle forever. No, we have been at this struggle forever. And I think I thank you, Nan, for that very, very that, I don't know if I can call it, that capsule of that capture that you made of what we're doing. And as I said, first, I'm humbled by your invitation, but also I'm proud to represent the government of Nicaragua. I want to greet all and thank the Nicaraguan Solidarity Coalition, I understand. But I see many people that, many comrades, many hermanos y hermanas who have devoted their life to struggle, but also to accompany our country, to accompany our struggle, to accompany our people in this permanent struggle for freedom, for independence, for self-determination. I was invited to talk about our position as a country at the climate change. I am not an expert in climate change, but I think at the core of the discussion of climate change, I'm going to do a presentation But at the heart of this discussion, it's policy, it's politics, it's a continuation of the struggle that the developing the countries who do not submit to the imperialist positions and demands are facing. First, let me start. Where do we start? No? You remember the Paris Agreement? No, the Paris Agreement in 2015 for us had a very narrow set of ambitions. If we want to really have an impact on climate change, if we do really want to have an impact on climate change, the world, the developed countries especially, have to have much more ambition. And I think that was our position. Our position was that the agreement in Paris in 2015 was much to accommodate the developed capitalist model, to continue to contaminate the world. And then as we see it in COP28, I'll mention afterward, to try not only to accommodate their model, to continue to pollute, but also to blame the developing countries. Our position is clear and basic. Climate change is caused by a predatory capitalist model of production and consumption. We can't get away from that. That is the core reason, that is at the center for the last, 200-300 years. That model, in all of its forms, has been the reason why we are at the brink, probably, of a catastrophe in the world because of climate change. The Paris Agreement, if we look at it very quickly there, speak of a world looking to increase global average temperature to well below 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue effort to limit temperature to increase 1.5. That is a broad statement. At the core of that statement, we have to recognize the injustice that the capitalist model has placed not only on individual countries, but on the world in itself. And no, not even the 1.5 degrees, which is, I think panelists immediately after the Paris Agreement, a number of panelists and specialists, I think they call it the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, came out saying that a world of 1.5 degrees is practically unsustainable for life. But let's think about who are the ones that are mostly affected. And I think that is the conversation we're having. No, not the technical conversation about how many degrees, but who is it affecting principally and mainly? Small island developing countries, they call them SIDS. Those are islands in the Pacific, but they're islands in the Caribbean. The lowlands of Central America. Central America is one of the most vulnerable areas of the world because of its Caribbean lowlands. At 1.5 degrees, these social, these societies that are about to disappear. They will disappear. It's not a matter of if it may happen. It is going to happen, and that's the terrible part of this discussion. You know, when you talk about limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, gas emissions, those are words in the political arena, but it is life that is disappearing under the feet and under the society of people in Asia, in Africa, in the Pacific, and in the Caribbean. But not only that, we also have the recurrent destruction caused by climate change is also something that is increasing. It's increasing the efforts of countries that have to invest more in their resilience capacity. This was our position. This is our position. Common but differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities. Climate justice with indispensable reparation. I think the discussion of reparation is at the core of our position. Converted into direct, unconditional, and respectful cooperation. And as we say, it is imperative that the capitalist countries reduce emissions by at least 50% in 2030. Reparations. I think many aspects of imperialist action, of capitalism throughout the world demand our societies to begin very strongly to look at this reparation policy to those who have been affected. The transatlantic slavery, for example, reparations. But if you look at in this very unjust world, the capitalist model always tend to get the reparations for their interests. Look at reparations, for example, in Zimbabwe, paying off the landowners, different forms of reparations by corporations. But when we start talking about reparations for the transatlantic slavery, for example, and now that we're talking about reparation for climate change, there is as I said, there is a centerpiece of that concept. The concept is you cause climate change, you cause the destruction in this world. This is not in a vacuum. You cause it. Your model of consumption and production is what's causing this destruction in our societies. So you have to pay for it. You have to repair what you have done. So our position, as I said, is Nicaragua does not cause climate change. Then look at this data. 10 countries with the highest emissions in the world emit more than 83%, while Nicaragua only emits less than 0.05% of global emissions. And we suffer the impact to our economy equivalent to 8% of our GDP, up to $4 billion annually, mainly to infrastructure, production, environment, health, education, energy, and all sorts of the society. What we're talking the floods, we're talking something that is not picked up in this very easily, the changes of the patterns of rainfall, the changes of the pattern of climate, the changes of the pattern of production for our campesino society. Our campesino society is being changed because what we knew as the ways of production, the months of production, and the yields that we would have in production are significantly changing. And the capacity to replenish recurrent destruction of public goods. We make an enormous effort as a developing society, if you want to use that concept. When I was hearing that just now, what we have done in the roads, what we have done in health, in building things, in building health centers, in all of these efforts that we're doing for public goods, in one hurricane, in one flood, in one change of pattern of climate change, we lose it. That replenishment capacity, because it's recurrent, it's practically every year we have to face, especially as I say, on the Caribbean and on the Pacific side of the country. We go through these, added to the fact that we are an earthquake. We sit on the what do you call it, the fire belt. I think you call it. Not only the earthquakes, but which is not climate change, or at least it's not until proven different a result of climate change. But we have to constantly, every year, reinvesting in replenishing these public goods. And it takes an enormous effort. And it's not only financial, it's psychological. If you live next to a river, Rio Coco, if you live next to a river, in any of our, I continue talking about the Caribbean, the lowlands, you know that December, January, February, you're going to have winds. But in the hurricane season, which begins what, May, June, July, August, September, October, and November, and Nicaragua, our hurricane pattern is a bit different from the rest of the Caribbean because it's linked to the lowering of the cold front. So the hurricanes get trapped. That is why our hurricane season is much more to the end, September, October, and November, which if you look at most of our hurricanes, they happen in that time. But that having to replenish public goods goes against or affects our capacity of development, but it also affects the society. It has an impact on the society. Now, we think that the developed countries, as we said, they are the ones to blame. And they must comply with the financing commitment to face the impacts. Now, I spoke about the Paris Agreement, no? The Paris Agreement and subsequent COP meetings, our conferences, established this amount. And that's why I dwell so much on the replenishing capacity. It said at least $100 billion annually need to be invested in order to maintain that replenishment or to confront the destruction caused by the effects of climate change. That's an amount set and pledged by the capitalist country. The amount pledged annually is far from that goal. It's at 100 billion. But we are not even reaching to 100 million US dollars in the so-called cooperation mechanisms. The second thing that of this shortcoming is that adaptation and mitigation, those two pillars in which the post-Paris whole discussion was set up, is insufficient. Adaptation, we need to prepare ourselves for what the climate change is going to happen. We have to build different. We have to have ways of adapting ourselves to this climate change. And mitigation, we have to confront the consequences, which is what I was speaking about, the replenishment. But those are insufficient because we are one of the countries that is pushing for this mechanism for loss and damages. And again, the reason is we lose so many of our public's good recurrently that someone has to pay for it. And who has to pay for it? Those who are causing climate change. And for us, in the way we look at it, is that this concept of reparations can be conceived as loss and damage. I was looking at the amount. I was trying to remember the amount that was agreed in the meeting in Dubai last month, and I think it doesn't go even close to over $100 million pledged, because as it said, I will pledge, but I will not comply. For us, then, the capitalist countries led by the European Union and the US have failed to comply with the Paris Agreement, and that, I think, is something that we need to maintain in when we're thinking of. They're trying to find any way to circumvent and to avoid that which was agreed upon in 2015, which our country, Nicaragua, said it was insufficient for us. Already it was insufficient, and even that which was insufficient, they have not complied. For example, their greenhouse gas emissions continue to increase in extreme values, producing, this is the data from our experts, 59 billion tons in the atmosphere, 4 times exceeding the norm established by science. And science, we go back to the panel of experts. Instead of emitting less, capitalist countries are emitting even 4 times the norm established by science. And that is for a world of 1.5 degrees, 1.5 to 2 degrees. That's unacceptable. They are irresponsibly promoting false option. This concept of carbon neutrality is one of the most cynic approaches to climate change. Is it, I will continue, me as a powerful, developed country will continue to consume, because the problem is consumption, and to produce, increasing my greenhouse gas emission, but then I purchase your, I think that the concept is NDAs, nationally agreed amount. So I come and I purchase Nicaragua's, because Nicaragua emits what I said, 0.05%. So I have a percentage that I can emit, so now I purchase it from you. That's the most cynical position of EPRs. That is why they are producing up to 4 times what we should be producing. So instead of going down from 2015, they are going up exponentially. But this second point, with this concept of carbon neutrality, neutral, some countries are saying they are carbon neutral. That's a lie. It's a lie with respect to the world, to Mother Earth. It's absolutely a lie. It may be true for a European country to say, I produce this and I purchase these certificates for emission. but it's not neutral. And from the financial perspective, I said before, they have not fulfilled the commitment. Remember, the $100 billion is not one amount, it's yearly. And they have not even reached 10% of that over the last year since 2015. This year, we had some more pledges for the mechanism for losses and damages. But again, it is completely unacceptable. In closing, you know, going through what happened in COP28, it closed with an agreement that signals the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel. And that's another discussion that we have to have and we have to understand. When we are talking about, okay, let the countries that are coming behind stop consuming or using fossil fuel. That in itself is unequal. That in itself is telling the countries, listen, because we can purchase these certificates, because we have the money, because we have already leaped from the fossil fuel reality, no, you can't do it. So now you are impeding the development of other countries. Now, that is a political discussion to have, because when the developed countries in the North are saying that they are beginning the end of fossil fuel, that also will have an impact in the capacity or in the development of other countries who have not developed or reached the technologies. You have 200 years, more or less, from the beginning of the industrial era to 300 years, whatever you want to put it, destroying this planet. And now you are forbidding by these kind of agreements that the rest of the countries can find a path. I know you say, okay, it's a path, it should be different. We are doing what we have to do. I go back to Comrade Nan again. We have increased not only the electricity grid to practically 100%. That is something unthinkable. Because when you say the energy grid to practically 100%, 99%, you have to think in those far communities where we are using solar energy, fundamentally solar or wind energy to small wind energy actions to bring energy to those countries, to those in that countryside, in that area, in the Northern Caribbean, for example. But we are doing what we have to do as a country in looking and seeking for alternatives to continue to create or produce, gas emissions. But COP28, personally, I see it as a contradiction, and it showed us the real face of how this unequal world is set up now. Every year we go back. Do not forget that this Conference of Parties is an intergovernmental activity, an intergovernmental meeting. It is only the governments. I was reading a question someone posed: how can we influence further going to COP29? There were about 120,000 people who made their way to Dubai. For a world of more or less 197 countries, I say that very carefully because we have additions. 120,000 people, really? In Dubai? Really? Where do we have to probably put the effort of our influence? It is on the national. It's at the national level. It is in the countries. I think that is where the fundamental influence that has to be done. And especially the countries in the north. That is where the discussion needs to happen, because we as a small Nicaragua, as a small country, as a small developing country, but as a small country in revolution, which I think brings a different aspect to it, we are doing what it is our responsibility from our political and ideological perspective, because we don't do whatever we do for international recognition. We do it because we believe it's part of the principles of our revolution. Whatever it is, health, education, climate change, climate justice, however you want to put it, I think we are doing what we have to do. But it is in the north. It is the comrades who are in those countries in the north. Number one, who continue to live a life or a model of consumption and a model of production that is the reason for this discussion, are the reason for where we are. I think there is an enormous internal discussion and internal conversation that have to happen within the societies and between the societies and your leaderships in the north to transform practically the way of doing things and the way of living. I think that is where we are. So I think there was a concept that we expressed in the meeting in Dubai, and we said, climate change is not just it is no more climate change discussion. Is a climate crisis, and it is a social crisis, and it is a conceptual crisis, and it is an ethical crisis. It is a moral crisis. We can look at it as climate change, but it is a world crisis, and we have to look at it from that perspective. We have to have, in the left, in the progressive world, from the perspective of social justice, we have to have that discussion. We have to have that ethical discussion, that political discussion, and that ideological discussion. We can't have it both ways. We can't have our way of living be in contradiction with our way of thinking. And that is one of the things I on a personal level, I brought back from Dubai. When I turned around and looked at 120,000 people in Dubai to influence the discussions of countries, of parties, I have to question myself, which is the method? I think the conversation today have to do with that. Which is the method? Now, we can talk about the 1.5, and we can talk about the 2 degrees, and we can talk about the injustice system, and we can talk about how capitalism is at the core of this discussion. But we need to have the personal, individual, organizational, ideological, and political discussion of what we are doing in the face of this conversation. Because the Mosquito communities, the Creole communities, the peasant communities, the campesino communities that live on the lowlands in Nicaragua or in Central America, that live in the Caribbean, we are the one facing this. We are the one facing this way of life, because we are the ones that are at the forefront of the impact of climate change annual lives. Now, this is not I don't want to put a conversation about who is doing best, who's doing, we know that the model of production and consumption of the capitalist system, that the predatory model is the reason for the world to be where it is with respect to climate change. But we know that capitalism is at the core of injustice, and is at the core of inequality, and is at the core of all of these social problems that we have. So I think I want just to close and link it to that continuous commitment to transformation, to revolution, to always struggling for social justice. This discussion is about climate change, but it's also a discussion about revolution and the transformation of our society and the strengthening of our capacity of influencing those big and small who may be leading that whatever injustice that we can face. So, comrades, I think the left has to raise this discussion, looking at the fundamental cause, as I said, capitalism, the model of production and consumption, but also looking within from the perspective of what are we doing as individuals and as society with respect to this injustice. I think if we have committed ourselves to struggle for justice and social justice, this is one of those topics, or this is one of those themes that encompass, that capture injustice and unfair ways of imposition over our communities and our societies. I would leave it there if we want to start that conversation about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. I would like to ask the first question. Obviously, Nicaragua has been giving an example to the world in its very strong and intelligent demands of the capitalist nations, both for reducing emissions and for providing reparations to all of the countries that are being affected. What I'd like to know is, are there other countries willing to go against the US and Europe and join Nicaragua in these demands? It's for you. Did you hear me?
I think okay, let me see how I phrase this. Countries, governments, societies, right?
Yes.
Three concepts. And I think that is at the societal level, that we have across the world conscience of how climate change is affecting, and how not only climate change, as I said, whichever form of injustice, citing Che Guevara here, whichever form of injustice, be capable of struggling against any form. So the societies are conscious, and the societies are willing, and are not only willing, but they are confronting however that capitalist model and that imposition model is affecting them from their community right up to the country. But I think there are a number of governments, especially in Africa, Asia, and Latin America and the Caribbean, that are conscious of the necessity to confront this. My president, Comandante Daniel Ortega, calls it la dictadura del capitalismo, ¿no? This capitalist imposition, no? So I think it's increasing the countries that are willing to stand up. When you hear the speeches from countries in Africa at these conferences, you must be hopeful, no? That effectively conscience is building in the world to confront this form of imperialist expression, no? But I think someone wrote something here regarding the lobbyists, no? These lobby organizations. They have money, they have interest, they are motivated by interest, they are motivated. But we have organization and we have people. We are also motivated. We are also motivated by injustice. So that ability to build networks and coalitions and conscience building actions like this one that you're putting together today is much necessary in these times. So yes, there are a number of countries that are willing, especially Africa is waking up. Africa is waking up.
Good. Thank you. Barbara?
Yes. Ambassador, I'm going to give you a two-part question. I may have missed it because I was screening other people's questions, but I don't believe that you stated specifically that Nicaragua did not sign the Paris Agreement. And so my first question is, why didn't Nicaragua sign the Paris Agreement? And then second, and this is from Margaret Baldridge, can you tell us to what extent the wars of U.S. imperialism, such as in Gaza and Ukraine, contribute to climate change?
The first question, we did not sign the Paris Agreement in Paris because we stated that it was completely unethical to sign that agreement in the way it was formed. It was formed for a photo op. It was set up for the North to continue doing what they're doing. Paris is what, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And I remember our collective friend, Paul, leading the charge under the leadership of Commander Daniel Ortega in that discussion. And we stood alone at the point because if it's one thing my leadership has is we're principled at things that are core. You know, Nan spoke about, I'm sorry, Nan, I always come back to you, but it looked like a discussion between you and me. But you spoke about our position with respect to the Israelite genocide. You spoke about our position with respect to the very brave and proud position of the South African government. You know, Mandela was speaking. When I heard the gentleman, the comrade, presenting the case, I could only picture Nelson Mandela stating what he stated about apartheid. And I think there's some interview that they brought about what President Mandela, what Madiba said regarding Palestine, you know, and regarding Cuba. I think there was also a position. These countries have stood with us. They have struggled with us. They struggled with us against apartheid, and we don't choose friends in different times. We are principled. I think that come back to us in those positions. So we did not sign the agreement. We adhered months after to the agreement. Okay, we also adhered our country. No, I think that is, you say that, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but the country adhered to the agreement months after. So I think that's the position. Now, your second question, I don't think I can answer it. That's a very broad inversion, but infer. But maybe if you tell me again, maybe we can have a conversation about it.
I believe the question has to do with whether wars of imperialism, generally speaking, contribute to climate change, and in what to what extent.
I ran away from it because my first answer would have been those wars, the Ukrainian, especially the Israelite genocide on Palestine, the Israelite position on Palestine. The apartheid is a poor expression of injustice, and it's an expression of the capitalist model and imperialist effort to control the world. Now, imperialists in the North trying to use Ukraine as a proxy to attack the Russian people. It is at the core of the same reason. The imperialists trying to keep their ways, trying to maintain their control over the world, and trying to intervene in every single effort of any country, who seeks to have an independent path to well-being. Let's use it like that, no? Instead of development, let's say the well-being of their people. So whenever you find that independent path to the well-being of a society or people, you have the imperialist position. And I think that I would go that way in the answer, no? Not whether they cause more emission or they cause less emission. That's not the discussion. It's the same pattern of production, consumption, and injustice that's proposed by the imperialist and the capitalist model of production and consumption. So that's my way of going into that question.
Thank you. Thank you, Nan.
The next question is very long, so I can't do all of it because there are a number of other questions by other people. But it has, even cutting it down, it has 3 parts. So Nicaragua is both a primary target of the unjust climate crisis and also in the vanguard of the global South's demand for climate justice. How can Solidarity members assist Nicaragua in this struggle, both within and without Nicaragua? Next question, how can we influence the agenda / broaden participation for COP29? And finally, how do we combat the carbon culture lobbyists at COP29? And I think you kind of answered a little bit of this, so choose what you will.
I saw that question when we were starting, and I tried to wrap around that question at the closing, because I think that is what I was trying to put as my position. I want to read what President Ortega said in a meeting of heads of state and government at the G77 and China in Cuba. I think it's last year, that sort of capture our position. He says, quote, "We note with deep concern that the main challenges generated by the current international economic order are unfair to developing countries. It has reached its most acute expression today due, among other things, the adverse effect of climate change, the loss of biodiversity, desertification, sun and dust storms, environmental degradation, without until now there being a clear roadmap to face these global challenges. Since 2015, Nicaragua has been warning about the non-compliance with the Paris Agreement by the capitalist country." I think that this is a speech that President Ortega gave in Cuba last year. with the heads of the G77, and for us again, the path, my personal perspective again, sitting in Dubai in the meeting and looking at these leaders, U.S. envoy and the other one envoy and the European, trying to bully, literally bully countries who are underwater today in the Pacific into accepting their unethical proposal with a carrot of X amount of dollars. And saying to myself, what's happening here? No? These are going to continue to defend their model of production and consumption. So what we should do, I think that's the question. What should we do? I think that is what I was trying to address. I don't know if we are having sufficient, I don't know. I really don't know because I'm not in the world of organizations and social organizations lately. But I think that's a discussion within individual transformation, societal transformation. It's not going to come from above. If we want to put governments above, I don't do that, but in my mental map, that is not going to come from governments. It's going to come from the society, the transformation of the societies, the transformation of the conscience of the society, and the ability of organizations to pressure their governments. It's not in Dubai that it happens. And it's not going to be, where the other one is, I think is Azerbaijan. I think, I'm not sure. And I know the other one is in Brazil. It's not there that's going to happen. It's not there that it's happening. It's happening in our day-to-day work. It's happening. So if we're talking about COP29, we have to talk about what we are doing in our countries to steer this agenda. And that's why I addressed it that way, That's why I tried I saw the question and I said, it was, for me, I said I wasn't going to, no, I'm not going to say, to look at 120,000 people. I know, well-hearted, or how you call it, intentioned. And probably that's a play, that's a way of fueling the motivation to put climate change in the revolutionary agenda. You hear what I said? It's like, how do we take this conversation not away, but using the data, using the experts, and turn it into part of our revolutionary conversation. In the conversation of transformation, how we do that. And I think that is at the core. It's not in COP. Because those are 197, 98 countries that have a set position. We have ours, and we set forth our position, and we don't yield from that. We don't negotiate with our principles. And that, I think that's a way of doing things. That is how President teaches us in the governments. Like when we have our principles, you can, I see Nan smiling, you can go back to many of the things that we're doing, and you find it in the 1969 historic program, a programa histórico of the Sandinista. Now, whatever we're doing today, you can find it based in our first fundamental manifest of 1969. It's called the historical program, Programa Histórico. We are very, stubborn with our path. That's us, no? But look at the societies, and that is where it transfers. And how, that's where transformation happens. But how do we take the discussion of climate change and turn it into part of our revolutionary narrative and a revolutionary discussion and a revolutionary action? You know, it's not an issue of experts. It's affecting people. And if we struggle for the well-being of people, this has to be in the core of our conversation. I don't know.
Thank you.
I'm trying to do the best I can here.
You're doing a great job. Barbara?
Suddenly we have many, many questions. There's one person who has asked her question 3 times very persistently, so I'll go ahead and ask it, even though it's rather pessimistic in its phrasing. Is the Paris Agreement being deliberately ignored because of a policy to eradicate world population? If not, what do you think the motivation is if it's not to deliberately destroy part of the world's population?
They're destroying the world, not only the population. So I don't know. We would have to get into a very deep philosophical conversation, but it's the writing is on the wall. You know, greed, stubbornness of the northern powers, de facto world powers, and but that greed and that need to control the world is at the core of this conversation. Now, for whatever reason or whatever outcome it has, you can read it wherever you want to read it. But I think, comrade, whoever made that question, that's not the fundamental question. The fundamental question is that the world, the earth, Mother Earth, as we know it, is at the edge of being unsustainable for life. And life is not only the physical existence, but all of these other things that we can do. All of the other elements of life, spiritual, cultural, religious expressions. So I couldn't answer that question the way I think the comrade wants to do it, but I would put on the table the reflection about how to impede it from happening.
Thank you.
John Perry writes, to our great friend Valdrack, Nicaragua has made enormous advances in renewable sources of electricity, but faces the huge challenge of how to decarbonize transport, which is a challenge for all developing countries, of course. Are there any initial plans as to how this might be done?
My dear comrade Perry, I just bring one hymn to my mind. One day at a time, sweet Jesus, one day at a time. You know, it's like one day at a time. Yes, I don't know of any specific plan right now that has to do with public transportation. And we all know that transportation is one of the fundamental, well, it's not transportation, actually, it's green gas emission from the production of cattle is probably, I was reading something the other day, it's double the one of transportation, gas emitting. But I think if I read clearly our recent agreements with our friends of the Popular Republic of China, we have seen a path to more electric vehicles. And I'm pretty sure that will most likely lead us to a path into public transportation. Now, we're all inferring here, no? We're all inferring, but believe me that it wasn't easy. In this issue of electricity, there are two elements: access and source. So as I said, one day at a time, sweet Jesus, is because our first issue was that social justice of access of electricity to everyone, no? Then where the source is coming from, I think we are pretty much very high. I don't want to shoot a number here, but I think we're pretty much very high in renewable. So that shows you the path. You know, public policy is not something that happens overnight. We all know that. Public policy, it goes transforming, but what you have to look at is the path, the intention. And I think we are going in that intention toward less green gas emission, and that's a commitment that the country has. No, so we can rest assured. How swift or how you know, we have to solve in transportation. We have to solve many things. You know, for example, I have to take a shot at this one, but remember in 1990, our capacity of railroads were sold by pound. You know, they lift up the railroad and sold them out by pound. It sounds better in Spanish. You know? But, you know, that took us a way back. We don't have railroads. One of the areas that probably the fastest and easiest transportation and transformation of transportation into more renewable is railroads. And I also have a great confidence that with our new, very, very close conversation and agreements with our friends from the Popular Republic of China, we should be able to be able to transform that. So as I said, this is a conversation trying to, you know, look at things from a policy perspective, and it should be there. It should be there. But let us have energy for all first, and let us have transportation for all.
Good point. Barbara?
Okay, I have a two-part question again. The first part is very quick, but Robin Lloyd would like to know, what is the painting behind you? Could you describe it, please? And then the second,
I didn't understand.
The painting behind you, la pintura behind you. Could you describe it? And then here is the other question. We believe that efforts were being made to block Nicaragua from receiving a grant from the Green Fund. Is that still true, or what is happening with that?
What was the first part? I didn't hear. I heard from receiving a grant.
Has Nicaragua been blocked from receiving the any grant from the Green Fund, or is that moving forward?
As what I know, we have not been blocked from receiving. No, I am not that I know of, not that I have heard of, not that I know of. But that opens a very interesting conversation about how difficult it is to access funds. I'm going to say it how I say it in my community. The rich people them come and say they're going to give you some money. You fight them to get the money. And when they finally agree to give the money, then they give you a whole list of things that you have to do. You following me? To get the money. And that, I think, is at the core also of the lack of access. These ideologues of what they call cooperation, what so-called cooperation, who just makes things everlastingly complex. You call it red tape. I don't think it's red tape. It's just trying to block the access. As I said, we probably have had discussions about the complexity of accessing the funds. So the first part of the question is, I don't know that. And I can confirm that. And it is, for me, I haven't seen us being excluded. Now, I can really say that it is, I don't know which word I want to use. Let's use something easy, hassle. Maybe we all can understand that, that word. So I think you quoted Dante Mossi earlier, saying how Nicaragua has a very well-organized structure for mobilizing resources. That's true. Now, not all countries have that. And I'm talking medium, big, and small. They don't have that capacity of mobilizing resources. I don't want to gloat about this, but our country has been, because of our principles in execution, in organization, because we base our public sphere on the public and people and the society and organizing society, it's very easy for us to implement projects. But there are many countries in other parts of the world, and I don't want to pigeonhole any, that don't have that structure and that capacity of mobilizing resources. And these funds are even for a group of people that have some expertise in mobilizing resources. You quoted Dante. I am not the one saying it. It's complex. Now imagine for the rest of countries that don't have that capacity. It's very difficult. It's very unfair. It's very prejudicial.
And so what is the painting behind you?
Okay, I thought you were going to help me talk about it.
No.
I think that depicts one of the moments. The guy who's the person in uniform is a part of the imperialist forces attacking Nicaragua in one of the first U.S. interventions in Nicaragua. It is a battle that happened in San Jacinto, which is a farm close to Managua, about 40 kilometers from Managua. And the Nicaraguan patriots had left without ammunition, and we confronted the U.S. intervention, if you want to put it in a political way, with stones. So that's Andres Castro pelting a stone at one of the U.S. Marines now. This is how you say, a filibustero, who was intervening in Nicaragua. So that's a very crucial moment of our historiography, of our mental political formation, the moment that without weapons, we were able to defeat U.S. intervention. And that's what that picture expresses for us. We may not have the weapons, we may not have the material, but we have the pride and the bravery to confront. And that has been our history everlasting as Nicaraguan. We have always faced U.S. intervention. We can count at least 5 U.S. direct interventions, U.S. Marines, U.S. intervention directly on us. We can count at least 5 of those. That's one of them. We call it the Guerra Nacional, the national war, and it's key to how we see ourselves in confronting U.S. imperialism and defeating it.
Yeah, the word in English is filibuster. William Walker, the filibuster.
Okay, filibuster.
Thank you.
Barbara,
what they do in the Congress also. That's the same word?
I'm sorry?
I think there are 2 meanings to the word.
2 different.
Oh, yes.
That's why I didn't want to use it, because I didn't want to confuse this way.
And I would translate this kind of filibuster of William Walker as a mercenary.
Yes. Yes, I said Marines. I said, no, it's the U.S. mercenaries that intervened in Nicaragua, took over Nicaragua, declared himself president. This man by the name of William Walker, a mercenary, declared himself president of Nicaragua and annexed Nicaragua to the Southern Conference. That's a part that is left out of history a lot, that he annexed Nicaragua to the Southern Conference. That's what you call it, the Southern Conference?
The Southern Confederate?
Confederate.
I mean, southern part of the United States.
He annexed, well, the Confederate was an entity, no? So he annexed Nicaragua to the Southern Confederate. That is what happened in that war. He burned down Granada, one of our gems, city, beautiful city. And he put a sign when he was leaving. He said, "Here was Granada." A city that was built since 1524, I think. One of the oldest cities on mainland in America. That painting can take us through the Nicaraguan history completely. And we can start a new webinar right now.
Right.
About Nicaraguan confrontation with U.S. imperialism.
Nan, should we make this the last question?
Yes, yes. And Ambassador, this is a question that I'm combining from 2 different people, and I think it will lead you into talking about the indigenous populations on the...
Can I hold a second? Just one,
yeah.
Just 1 second.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
There are calls that you cannot say no. Children, mother, wife. Huh?
Do you have time for the 1 more question? Because we have overtime where we are making you work very hard. So in June 2021 in British Columbia, they recorded the highest ever temperature of 49.6 degrees centigrade. The next day, 90% of that First Nation town burnt due to the excessive heat and wind. In summer 2023, large extents of Canada's forests burned. Likewise, fires in places not seen in recent history burned around my home of Spokane, Washington, and around Flathead Lake, Montana burned, all areas with Native American people. Is the role of First Nation peoples centered adequately in this struggle? And another part of that is by someone else, which fits in nicely. Have you noticed that Indigenous voices and organizations like that of the campesinas who have a deep connection to Mother Earth are taken seriously in Nicaraguan government and are part of policy making. Well, they don't fit together. I read that wrong. But so answer what you like. It's the last question.
I think the knowledges of people, First Nations, in our case, Afro-descendant, the knowledges of our campesinos are not only, can say, respected in a token kind of way in our policy formulation as a country, but it is at the key of our, at the core of our policy planning implementation. As I said, you know, generally you may see in other places a disconnection between popular knowledge and national policy. Generally, there are two different social sectors that are, but in our country, we have embraced and introduced to the core of what we're doing our popular knowledge. And popular knowledge as a general, and specifical when we talk about, you say First Nation, we say Indigenous, Afro-descendant knowledge, or knowledge and active participation. You know, this is a country that has two autonomous regions that recognizes the fundamental inspiration that the struggle against colonialism, against neocolonialism, against the imperialist perspective, imperialist actions on our country. We recognize the inspiration of the struggle of our people. You know, sometimes when you read history, you read about Andres Castro, and I think someone said there it's not William Walker. Of course, it's not William Walker. I would say it's more Byron Cole, but because because that was the guy that William Walker hired. There's a story there. Byron Cole went to William Walker. William Walker was the political person, and Byron Cole was more the military mercenary. But we don't want to get into that. But yeah, you know, whenever I see any painting of Byron Cole, he is a red-headed guy. You know, I hope anyone who's red-headed on this webinar doesn't take issue with that. But but so if whenever I see it, the person that comes to my mind is more Byron Cole. But anyways, coming back to I think it's not only safe, but we need to recognize how our party, the Sandinista Front for National Liberation, how our government of national reconstruction has included popular knowledge, indigenous knowledge, Afro-descendant knowledge in our day-to-day actions. You know, I think that is a conversation that is very little, that is very little recognized. How this revolution has included us, and I always say us because I come from one of those communities, how it has included us, you know, in all of the aspects of it. So when we talk about this whole conversation about climate change, remember, before we leave, I'll give you a data. Nicaragua has given title on land of up to 31,000 square kilometers in the hands of indigenous communities. Nicaragua's, that is between 25% of the country, it has given it, not given it, has recognized that land in the hands of indigenous population. Now, that also has its challenges, it has its difficulties, how to implement it, how to safeguard it. That decision of the Nicaraguan revolutionary government of putting all of that land, out of 132,000 square kilometers, 31,000 square kilometers are in the hands of indigenous communities and Afro-descendant communities. That may answer the question.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ambassador Jaentschke, for your participation today and for even staying overtime to answer more of the many questions that got posed. We really appreciate your time, and we appreciate the participation of everyone who's joined us today. And stay tuned for future webinars. We don't have a confirmed date yet for next month, but we will keep you posted as soon as we know for sure about that. And I think that's all I need to say. Nan, do you have final words? And then if the ambassador has any final comments, we can ask him for that.
I don't. Thank you so much.
Ambassador, do you have any final words you'd like to share with everyone?
I put there, Nicaragua's autonomous law is light years ahead of Latin American countries. I think it's light years ahead of many countries in the world. And we are proud of it. And we're going to elections in March, regional elections in March. I just wanted to say that. Again, I thank you very much for inviting me to have this conversation. I hope shed some light. And I think at the end of this day, I go away feeling hopeful, feeling enthused that even in this small community, we have the interest to look at these very important issues in the world. And from our revolutionary perspective, from our Sandinista perspective, our government, I really want to thank you all for your continued interest, and let us spread the word what we're trying to do here in this little country in the middle of America. Thank you very much to all, and thank you very much.
And I'm assuming it's okay to share your PowerPoint with the people who registered for this. Is that it?
I'll send it by mail to Nan. I think I have your YouTube. You were the one talking to me.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Goodbye for now.
Thank you.